So thanks for coming to the session today. Let's take a look at what our agenda is going to be. So we're going to look at perspectives. This is just a few comments that we've received from various faculty and students. We'll talk about Blackboard SaaS, which stands for Software as a Service. We're going to move into the video enhanced classroom. So that just talks about some of the enhancements that you have in the classroom. And we bring that up because you're going to be using a lot of the things that you may do in the classroom from a Blackboard shell, or using Blackboard to kind of highlight some of the various resources you might be using in the classroom and outside of the classroom. We'll go through 8 guidelines for course design. So these are just kind of tips, tricks, best practices that think about as you start approaching a course design. We'll go through a quick Blackboard demo so we can just click around the system. There may be some questions at that point, and then I'll point you towards some additional resources you can to continue your Blackboard knowledge, as well as just teaching strategy and other kind of opportunities we have in the teaching and learning environment.
Okay.
So as we go forward, the first thing I wanted to throw out is just some faculty voices. We had submit a survey at the end of the last spring, and obviously that spring did not end in the most unique, or you ended in a unique way than most semesters. And so these were just some of the comments that faculty had been saying in some surveys. So most of them had to do with trying to onboard certain amounts of technology in a slower pace so that they didn't feel overwhelmed, being able to use technology effectively enough to communicate. Also, just more interest in professional learning opportunities in Blackboard, Zoom, other things like that. So we've been listening to that, and there have been a slew of professional webinars like this. This particular session is more focused on the nuts and bolts, the technology piece, the how. Some other sessions are designed about the why. We tend to say, look at the why first, and then you can kind of figure out how you plug in the how. Not all tools are going to be necessary. Now, we do believe Blackboard is one of the tools that would be used uniformly across campus as just in a use case, but how it's used, it can be used in a variety of different ways, and you can adjust it to based off your teaching style, your program, where you're coming from. The student voices that are out there, what are the students saying? There's a lot of students that just want to have the support and usage of Blackboard there, or some sort of communication structure that's very consistent with the experience that they may have had in the classroom. So if they're going to be attending in a hybrid or online perspective, they want to feel like as though they're getting the same kind of education that they had before. So how do you deliver that in a virtual platform? It's difficult. It's a different kind of modality, and there's a lot of things to keep in mind as you start embarking on that journey. So looking at the Blackboard into the cloud, I had mentioned this earlier. Blackboard is being migrated. This is our on-campus system. We do have some messaging on the login of Blackboard. It's not something that's going to really affect you from a visual standpoint or a functionality standpoint in terms of the tools that are available in the system. But what it's doing, it's enhancing our ability to grow and scale as more students use the system, as we use the system a lot more heavily. So right now we are hosting an on-premise version of Blackboard. That means we manage multiple server sets so that we can deliver the courses and all the different content interactions on site from CSU-Pueblo. What we're talking about now is migrating that environment into the cloud, and so Blackboard then manages it. So it does take a relatively large amount of money to put your instance in the cloud, but once you start understanding how much it costs to have an on-prem kind of instance, when you talk about servers and staffing and capacity, you start understanding that it's relatively the same cost, but it's just putting the money in a different bucket, so to speak. So we're going to have some enhanced features, and as things grow as we go along, we're going to be able to take advantage of what we're calling this Blackboard in the cloud, or the SaaS model. Just keep in mind that there is going to be a downtime. There's a downtime from August 9th to the 14th. Not the best times to have a downtime in a system right when we're getting ready for semester, but it is necessary because this is likely to be one of the last downtimes or last maintenances that we've had with Blackboard. So if you've used Blackboard before, if you've been in the system, you're familiar with the fact that we've shut it down maybe twice a year for a couple of days to be able to enhance our servers and do things. Well, by migrating it to the cloud, they can move us to a whole nother server set very easily without us even knowing, and upgrade our instances just as we go along. So we're really excited about having that capability as we go forward. There's also some additional tools that we're not unveiling at this point, or we're not really supporting, so to speak, because there's just not enough time to get documentation and training put together. Plus, we feel there's been a lot of change already, so how much more change can we stand? We're going to kind of put off those until we look through them in the fall semester. So a quick brief overview of what you are going to expect as you get into the classroom and how this might complement what you do in Blackboard. So in the classroom, this is just a typical enhanced video setup. You'll notice on the right-hand side there that there's a video camera or a webcam with a microphone integrated, and then there's a little red document cam off to the side. So if you're in the classroom, you would turn on the room as you typically would. You would go in and make sure it's on the lectern PC, which is the most important part because that's how you're going to be able to use Zoom in the classroom. Once you connect into that platform, and you have your computer logged in, you'll be able to use the webcam to start up a Zoom. This is just a quick zoomed out version of what you might see. Now you'll notice that on the screen here, it's our multimedia technician, Wayne Todd, has taken a picture, but you won't really be able to write on that screen and for it to be seen easily at a remote distance. So when you're doing that, we're saying, let's use the Lumen's dot camera, and a dot camera will allow you to write on a piece of paper that's underneath that dot cam and also project it out to the room, so both remote and distance students, as well as the ones in the classroom, will be able to see what you're maybe writing on that dot camera. Now, I say this because you may be taking these Zooms that you do in the classroom, and you may be integrating them and adding them to your Blackboard courses. So if you're going to be putting a lot of this information out and you record the session, much like I'm recording today's session, I'll be posting this in the Blackboard PLC course that we have so that you'll have access to it at a later time. So let's jump in and let's start talking about Blackboard specific. So we have approximately 45 minutes here that we can really unpack the different aspects of Blackboard and go through these different pieces. Now, I do want to let you know that you can go ahead and use that chat throughout the session. You can click on also your participants window, and I suggest that you might do that as well if you have any questions throughout this session. So the participants window in Zoom, if you just move your mouse around, and you'll notice that there is an area that you can look at your menu. There is a participants button. You click that participants button, it'll open up, you'll show all the other people that are in the session, but at the very bottom of that participants window, there's going to be a couple buttons. And so if you're seeing that in that participants window, those buttons, it says yes, no, go slower, faster. If everyone can click a yes, for instance, or there's also a little more area, you'll notice that you can do some waves and other things. That allows me to know that you can send that out. If I'm going too fast, going too slow, you have a question, go ahead and click that there. So we did have a question about Zoom being connected to Blackboard, and yes, we do have that, and we will cover that in today's session. We just got that integrated yesterday, so the full documentation is set to be unleashed in the next couple of weeks as we continue with that. So we will cover that. So to talk about a default Blackboard shell, there's been a lot of misnomers about what this means, this template shell that comes in, but at the beginning of every semester, as your courses are built, you're going to be given a shell for your course. So instead of just getting a completely blank canvas, what we've done is we've built in some of the best standard-based pieces that you would expect to have in a course. So if you look at instructional design, the ideas behind what's the most effective when you're building an online, hybrid, or flipped kind of course, we're diving into those best practices, and we're putting a kind of a suggested navigation on this menu. This is by no means where your navigation is going to set at the end of the session. It might be completely different based off how you're looking at the course, but we would say, and after you see some of our guidelines, you understand why you might want to keep some of these areas as you go forward. As you go forward, you do have complete control of this menu. So you can add your own names to it. You can add and move things into their own places. So when we start talking about the default shell, we are, like I'd mentioned, it's built with standards and form practices. It's easy to customize depending on your needs. So depending if it's a subject, a topic, time-based, there's a lot of different ways that you can set it up. So it's really going to be on you as to what strategy you're going to use to build that out. So a lot of the great courses, though, they do go through certain rubrics. You may have heard of Quality Matters, for instance. Quality Matters is an organization that looks at different courses that are built for online. They're shared amongst certain institutions that have reviewers that go through a rubric, and they look at a whole slew of things that will be able to say how well your class would be delivered. So sometimes it's just the user experience. It's the navigation. It's how certain things are integrated into the classroom. Accessibility. A lot of those different components will go into that rubric, and it's usually graded by a peer. So somebody at another institution that's already gone through the Quality Matters training. So we use a lot of those practices in here. We don't formally do a lot of the Quality Matters rubrics across this campus. It is an organization you have to pay for, but there are a lot of trainings, and actually there's some things coming at Convocation that talk about Quality Matters. So going forward, before we jump into the system and look at the nuts and bolts, I wanted just to let you know about 8 guidelines for course design. I am going to let you know that this slide deck is available after the session. It will be posted in the Blackboard PLC course, and I've mentioned that a couple times. So by going to these sessions, you're auto-enrolled in that course. It's just a course that collects all the different pieces of the PLC sessions. So that's professional learning sessions here at CSU-Pueblo. So the first thing is you want to choose a meaningful organizational scheme. So dependent on your course, you're going to chunk it into parts. And those parts are going to be gone through the duration of your course. So if you're in a 16-week course or you're in an 8-week course, you may have a different way that you chunk it out. It may be based off of week. So each week you have a specific thing that you're doing to move along through each unit. Other times it might be topic based. So you have a topic that you utilize for 1 week, and then another topic that you'll have for 3 weeks. So you're going to have that organizational structure from a topic-based side of the house. So understand how you want to organize things, because once you understand how you get one module out of that organization, you can duplicate it across the remainder of the course to make it easy to navigate and set some expectations for your students as you go through. So going into it, use specific and accurate language to label menus, items, and files. Now, this is a big one. We see this happen quite a bit where a file that's very important gets dropped into Blackboard, but it doesn't have a meaningful name. You don't know what the context for clicking that file is. It's important to understand that as a user, you want to be able to engage with the content in a meaningful way. And the more that you make it that you're having to go through all kinds of folders and try to find things, open things up, you're going to put more cognitive load on the student. And it's going to be very difficult. They're going to get frustrated, and you're going to be really putting a barrier in the way of them getting to your content. And so this is a big strategy at just making sure that it's very clear as to what they're about to click on. And once you create a strategy for yourself, you want to duplicate it across your other things that you're utilizing. So ensure your choices are pretty distinct if you're building that main navigation menu. You don't want things that are going to have too much ambiguity as to what might be in there. You should be very descriptive so you can really understand, okay, if I click here, I'm pretty much going to get to the section that I need to get to. Be consistent. I've mentioned that twice before, is you want to create kind of a structure and then duplicate it amongst your organization. So a good example of that is if you build an organizational module and the first thing you do is reading at the beginning of the module, and then there's a little check your knowledge quiz, and then maybe there's a video and an assignment. Consider having that same structure for every module going forward. So you would know that on a weekly cadence that you're going to be engaging with the readings, you're going to be watching that film, and then you're going to be doing a slight assessment and then going into another area. So building that consistency is going to help with the users in engaging with that content as they go through the course. Additionally, you can provide direct access to frequently used items. So there was a question already, can you connect Zoom with Blackboard, seeing that those two are going to be connected somewhat together. So yes, that's something that you can do a direct link to. It's a common used item, so you might want to put that in your major navigation menu. Certain things you don't want to put in your navigation menu as well, though, is like course modules. So we just talked about chunking. You don't necessarily want every module in the side of your course menu, but you would want them inside of a course modules menu item. So once you click on that, then you're diving down a little bit deeper into all the modules. If you put too many of the modules in the navigation, you're actually, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, because then there's too much in that navigation as you move forward. limit the levels of navigation to 3. And so what I mean by that is you really only have one level of navigation on the main navigation that you'll see in just a moment on the left-hand side, but you can put folders into folders. So there is a question if we should put Zoom as a course module in the navigation. Putting it in the navigation is something that we're going to suggest, and we'll definitely show you how to do that. I think this session will talk a little bit about the implementing of Zoom into a session like this, but we're also going to have a lot more documentation that gives you the actual clicks and buttons that you need to do to manage those Zooms that you may be having in the classroom. So we just don't want to start nesting things into each other. That's really what this guideline 5 is about, is that the more you're burying things into each other, it becomes very difficult to find those things and navigate to them. There's been some times where there's been some really amazing resources that students have never been able to get to because they've been nested so deeply there. Use visual cues. So use these headings, use hierarchy, use different things to separate your content in specific ways, especially in the navigation. You have some abilities to use some dividers in there. When you're starting to put a description under an item that you put in there, put some bullet points under there. If you have a course module, you might even just give an overview of what you're expecting to be inside of that module, so it cues the students as to where they might be going into. It might even kind of relate to what we were talking about before, but if you look at your course modules, instead of calling it just week 1, call it week 1 dash, and give a little bit more context as to what that week would be about. So if you're talking about some sort of mathematical theory or algorithm, you talk about, you put that in that title. So it's a visual cue to get into the right place. Number 7, you really want to have a starting point. If you start in a course, you want to be able to jump right into a specific area and know where to go first. You want to set the expectations for the course. You want to let the users know. Now, we do build a lot of these guidelines into the course by default, so everything I've just been discussing has already been integrated into some degree into the course. Now, you use your insights on how to utilize Blackboard to go ahead and build onto this and make it your own, make it unique. And finally, getting input from others on your course structure. So this kind of leans into the concept of what Quality Matters does with the organization, as having kind of peers overview what you have in that course. So just getting somebody else to give you a kind of an unbiased opinion of that. It may be some other students throughout the course of your semester. Have them gather some insights from surveys, talk about it with your colleagues, also consult with instructional designers. Those are the great ways to start looking at that course structure and figuring out if it's the right way and how it's set up. So moving along, we're gonna go ahead and log into Blackboard. I'm gonna go through a live demo so we can go through some things. I wanna keep the demo section a little bit more loose. So if there's questions as I go along, feel free to ask questions. You can unmute your mic if you like. If you like to use those buttons to raise your hand or let us know that you would like to ask a question, we can do that as well. So just wanted to point out that there's some information about who I am, also where you can go when you need help. So typically, if there's a nuts and bolts question with Blackboard, there's an error, there's an issue, you can go right over to our csu-pueblo.edu/IT website. There's also the Center for Teaching and Learning website. So we've taken what we call our instructional technology resources, and we've migrated them out of the technology website, and we've started integrating it with the bigger whole for academic strategy and things like that with our Center for Teaching and Learning. So there are a lot of resources very specific to the academic side of the house, as well as some of those educational technology resources at the CTL website if you're looking for more of the strategy. But just think of IT as definitely being that first conduit when you have issue. I'm going to take a quick pause right there and allow anybody to let me know if there's any questions that have cropped up to this point. If not, I'll go ahead and get into the screen share. So it looks like there was a question that came in is, can you connect another LMS's grading rubrics and content to Blackboard? Or is it best to create your own module in the navigation system? So that's a good question. That's something that you will have the ability to make a decision on. So for instance, if you have a publisher content and you're working with a third-party publisher, how that works is you're not necessarily taking the content they have and just copying and pasting it into Blackboard. What they'll typically do is build an integration, and specifically, I'm talking with Chris right now, is Chris has an integration with his vendor, or his publisher, and what they do is we have to put some information into our Blackboard system. Once we get that set up, he can do what's called like pair with their course. And so students log into our Blackboard because they're able to get in the course, they're registered for it. You're able to have your normal communications through your announcements, through different PowerPoints or slide decks or communication that you typically have in Blackboard. You can do all that. But where it becomes powerful for the publisher is then you're linking to some of their content. It's called like a deep link. So then you're able to link your students right into the publisher's resources for a bit. They may have a test, they may have some sort of quiz, they may have some different applications that the student uses there, and then the student gets dropped back into your Blackboard. Now I'm generalizing that experience. Every publisher works a little differently, but that's the general experience that you'd get with using a publisher. So potentially in Chris's scenario, you would have your Blackboard set up with a baseline of what you have as an instructor. So all your syllabi, everything that you would have as a presentation, any links to some sort of Zoom. And then you work with your publisher to figure out how you add links within Blackboard. Some of those links they literally click on and then you are in a publisher's website. So you're outside of our instance. And then if there's a grade or something that happens in that publisher's website, it typically syncs back into the Grade Center. But that's all based off what tool you're using. So you're going to have to really identify your vendor representative or your publisher representative, and then work with them to understand how their product works. All right, so let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go back into utilizing Blackboard. Okay, so getting to Blackboard, where do you go? I think as everyone should be seeing my screen at the moment. The first way to get into Blackboard is to go to our main web page. So our web page is going to have all the information that this is on the faculty and staff portal that's up at the top. You'll notice that there is a link for it on near every page that we have on our website. Let me make sure I got my chat up here. Be able to see everyone's information. Give me just a second. There we go. Okay, and so you would click on that faculty and staff link and you're going to get to all the various resources that you have at the institution. So before we jump in, I just did want to point your attention to that down here. If you clicked on University Services, that's where you'd find that information technology link. You can click over to information technology page. That's where you can begin with the help ticket. It goes right into our help system and you're able to open a ticket with us right away. So if it's an issue. Additionally, if you go back onto this main page, I believe it is under, let's see if it's under here. Doesn't look like it's in this particular list here, but I know it's in our main navigation for the Center for Teaching and Learning. If you go under academics and you click for Center for Teaching and Learning, you're also going to have all of those academic resources here in the professional learning category. There's a lot of information here that's going to get you on that more nuts and bolts of teaching. Okay, let's jump in to Blackboard. First thing is you go to this page, you click on the Blackboard link, and it's going to take you to the Blackboard login page. This page typically will have information about upcoming webinars. It'll have downtime information, not as much anymore when we get into the cloud. So we are about 9 days away before that migration starts. And other information that's really helpful for you as a user, as a student, as a faculty. One thing to take note of is that the two main browsers that we suggest usage for Blackboard are Mozilla and Firefox. If you're using Internet Explorer or Edge or Safari, we are absolutely saying those ones are probably not the best. They may not work. You can click this, check your browser for compatibility, and then you'll be able to see which browsers are supported, what might be disabled, what are the things that you might think about as you look in that system. So it does show you my browser right now. My pop-up blocker is blocked, so if I wanted to use it for Blackboard, I'd have to know that I have to unlock that pop-up blocker if there's pop-ups, and that I may not have Adobe Flash or some other details here. But for the general gist of Blackboard, even though I have some of these issues, my Blackboard is browser is supported by Blackboard. So check that link definitely a helpful tool. I always suggest having at least 2 browsers installed on your computer. At any given time, one of the browsers is going to do something. It's going to puke on you and it's not going to work. And going to the other browser typically will solve that issue. If for some reason you're getting the same thing in both browsers, that's an indication to us that maybe it's more systemic, bigger kind of issue. So then you'd be going to the IT help desk and be able to get that ticket staged up. So in my case, I'm going to log in just to let you know I do have one additional button than you will have as we work through these sessions. So just keep in mind that I have system admin privileges. But as we go through this, you're going to have a lot of the same features that I do have sans that system admin button that you're seeing in the upper right corner of my screen. Let's just take a quick few minutes to talk about what you're seeing right here on this first board, this dashboard that you get into. This is the notifications dashboard. It's an aggregate of all your course information as it flows in from Blackboard. So when you look over into the right-hand side, in the upper right-hand side, you're going to have a CSU-Pueblo tab, and you're going to have a courses tab. The courses tab will be kind of the same thing as that we were just on with the CSU-Pueblo tab. You're going to have access to the various courses that you're enrolled in as an instructor, as a student, as any kind of role in our system. CSU-Pueblo tab has the same courses listed there, but one of the common things that's utilized and asked about is this particular cog that appears in here. So you're more than welcome to try to follow along with this session. Sometimes it's a little difficult if you're having only one screen on your computer at home because it's hard to see what I'm doing. So I would follow along right now. This will be recorded. You can watch it later on, and you can do some of these things later on. You can pause this video, go do the thing that I'm asking you to try out, and then come back and watch the rest of this video. It will be a YouTube video. So for right now, if you want to just pay attention to some of these areas, you can go and follow along just visually. But by clicking this cog, what it does is it opens up all the courses you're enrolled in, allowing you to reorganize the courses. So this particular one, this SAS testing course, I want to be at the top. I'm going to pull it to the top. Maybe I don't want to see all the other courses in this course menu. So I'm just disabling their view by deselecting the checkboxes. When I hit submit, all I'm going to have is one course in my course menu, making it very easy for me to see what course I need to go into. It's just as easy as going into that cog and changing other things and adding additional details if you want to see certain ones show back up again right in that course menu. We typically see this when you have older semesters that are still in your Blackboard course menu that you just want to turn off and you don't want to see that. An additional area that I do tend to turn on is my course ID area. It just helps me understand what course ID I am in. And you can also have announcements show up, some of the latest announcements for that course. So for instance, if I turn in announcements here, I can click that on. And in a quick eagle eye view, I can see here are the courses I might be teaching or facilitating and any announcements that have popped up in the last couple of days. I'm not going to go through a lot of the tools on this section. We want to get into the nuts and bolts of how you build a course. That's really what you're here for today. But I did want to just make a quick mention to this Quickly menu. Quickly is a third-party tool we've integrated in the system that quickly, no pun intended, I suppose, allows you to turn on and off your course's availability to students with a little switch. So for instance, if I were to turn off my course for, let's see here, which one we can turn off, my Blackboard course, the SAS testing, I click that button, and if I click over here for a second, I may have to even refresh my screen. We'll be able to see that it turned off the course. It is not available. Not currently available means it's not available for students to see. So if you're seeing that, you're able to click on this course, turn it on, and your course is going to be turned on. Again, this is a third-party tool. There are a few other things that can be very helpful. If you're using some of the grading features within the course, it will show you which courses have the latest things that have been turned in. And you can also post announcements and send emails en masse to all your courses. So if you'd like to select every single course because now for some reason you're taking everything online for the next couple of weeks because you're maybe been quarantined, for instance, you can go in here and mass select all your courses and submit that announcement, and it'll hit everyone in all your courses in Blackboard. Great tool to use is that Quickly. Let's jump into the course and start getting to the nuts and bolts of Blackboard. By getting into Blackboard, you are in and seeing right now a most basic Blackboard type course. So this is what you walk into if you've never built a course within Blackboard. Now, one of the things is once you spend a lot of time building a course in Blackboard, you don't want to have to do that every semester. So you can copy over resources from a prior semester. Not only can you copy resources though, but you can build a long-standing template of your course. If you're interested in doing that, you got to engage us in the instructional technology department. We can build you what we're calling a template shell. You build out your course and it stays there in perpetuity so that you can use it in future implementations of your course builds and then do a complete clone and duplicate to make that happen. So one thing that we wanted to do is go through the different sections that you might see when you look at a course. There's a lot to unpack when you're at this menu. We're going to go through the things that you need to know to be functional. There are going to be gaps in that knowledge. I'm not going to go into detail of every item because you would be here for hours looking at the things that you can do in here. That's why we wanted to hit the ground running, give you some sort of a template to suggest where you might put some content, and that way you can kind of take the torch and move on from there. First off, just looking in the upper right-hand corner of the course, there's going to be some buttons up there. One of the ones is an on-off edit mode for the course. That is just saying your ability to edit the course is turned on and off. It does not turn the course on or off. If I were to just click that button, it's going to be the close approximation to what students would see for your course. You can't edit things, you can't add new items, you just see everything with all the editing tools turned off. If you leave this and you come back later, it still should be off, but it's never going to affect your users of the course. I'm going to turn my edit mode back on, and just to the left of that is a really very helpful tool. That is your student preview mode. Student preview mode actually provisions you an account within the system to be looking at this course as a student. It's a true student view. You can take your tests, you can take your assignments, you can input grades for that student. One of the things that you need to keep in mind though is when you click on student mode, it's going to take you into as a student. And so it's going to take away all editing privileges that you typically would have. You'd be able to go through the course, take all those tests. But once you get to your to exit student mode, I typically click on these settings just to verify that I have the right settings selected. And so I have it where it's not going to ask me to do this every single time I exit, but I want to keep the preview and user data because I want to be able to interface with the student preview mode that I just added into this course. So I'm going to save it with keeping that preview data. And so then when I exit the course, if I were to go back into my grade center down in the bottom here, and I'll go into my full grade center, you're going to notice there is my preview student user now. So my preview student user, for me just being an instructor in there, is also in the course. I can go and put in grades, I can jump back in that student preview mode, and I can see without a doubt what it would be like to be a student in this course. So very powerful buttons up there. Once you get used to Blackboard and you start seeing these big, long descriptions under every item, it might be advantageous to click this little question mark, turn off the question mark, and all those little tips will disappear. Or conversely, if you need the question mark turned on, click it and you'll be able to see everything that describes what section of the course is going to be about. So let's take a peek down this navigation menu. What does it have? What are the tools? So there's tools and then there's content areas. So core content areas are ways that you create content. So think about it as a folder. It's just a blank area that you're able to shove some content into. And of course, using our guidelines, you're going to do it in a nice way. And then there are tool links. Tool links will open a very specific tool and only have very specific functionality. So one of the first tool links that most people get to is the announcements tool link. The announcements is just like you would think. It's a pin board for your class. It is not the vehicle for posting content for your class. It's very short introductions. It's very specific to saying, hey, I posted an assignment over here. Go check out the assignments folder. It's very minimal kind of pieces. You're not going to want to put the whole rubric or the whole setup of an assignment in an announcement. The idea behind it is a pin board for your class. By hitting the Create Announcement button at the top here, you can put a subject line, you can put in a nice description, And a little bit further below, you can even select a button to send that a copy of that announcement the second it shoots off. So not only do you get a pin board in your class, but all the students get an email to their inbox. You can also do some stuff with date restrictions. I'll just take this moment to mention that most items in the system have a date restriction category. So you can have it turn on a specific day, you can have it turn off on a specific day. You have a lot of tools that you can use with that. So I won't really cover it too much, but it's really handy. You can always click these buttons, pick a particular day, click a particular time, and at that particular time it would turn on, and at a particular time it might turn off. So I'm gonna go ahead and cancel on that, but you get the idea there. So going down this list, we're not gonna go through all the items, but you can see that we're already using some of those guidelines. We have a really good starting point. First of all, they just get docked on the announcements, but the first thing they might see is, hey, getting started, what do I need to do? So when you get to getting started, we just outfit you with some of the information that you might wanna leverage about your course. Now, some items are hidden because you may just not wanna use it. So this particular one, your welcome message, is hidden. So what it does is you can fill in the blanks here. It talks about an in-depth look at whatever your course might be about and a little bit of the coverage of it. It talks about how you navigate the course, some just general ideas on navigation, and then additionally web browsers and email and all the expectations of just the technical nuts and bolts of the course. It's pretty handy, so you'd want to go in there and make some updates there. How would you turn on an area, for instance, is if you went down to this drop-down arrow here, you can just make it available from the drop-down, or you can also just edit the item by clicking edit in that drop-down and going into the area, taking these blanks out, filling your information in, and then permitting the users to view the content. You can also attach items in those areas as well, so that's going to be a helpful tool. So once you get through your getting started in the setup there's not much more we would suggest adding to this. You might want to put some more context in your course overview, but really more of the academic aspects of it, you find that in the syllabus and more. So that's where you're going to start putting information about your syllabus. You might be pushing discussion rubrics, critical thinking rubrics, other kind of things that you might want to leverage in your class. You can find those there. A little bit lower down, if you have textbook information, you can find it there. And then there's also the concept of netiquette. This is by no means any policy or official procedure, but this just is a document that just shows how you might have some ground rules for your class, how you might communicate in discussion boards with a good set of rules. So you can kind of look at that. Again, I said there's no policy or any specific things that forces you to use any of these content pieces. This is all for you to start your course building. As you go a little bit further down, you have some contact information. That one's handy as it will provide contact information not only to you as an instructor, you can add your own create contact for yourself, but for other individuals and other areas across campus. So we've just done various areas like the library or so student support service, advising, things like that that a student might use pretty frequently. Now we're going to talk about the Zoom sessions. We had a live Zoom session folder that's in there. So if you're not wanting to integrate, you can go in here, you can create just a basic piece of content and drop in some of your information, or additionally you can go in and you can add your Zoom meeting. A little bit further down, you have course modules. This is where you'd stage the bulk of your class. You build modules, that chunking of content that we talked about before, those different areas that you'd be able to build within that particular course. One of the strategies that we've been using is we've been saying build all of your assignments in one folder. So when we say that is you can go to this assessment tool, you can add an assignment, which is our assignment tool. This is a really big one. An assignment tool allows you to collect the assignment virtually. So it's going to be very big to use this because nobody wants to create that inside of like using your email to collect assignments. You're just going to fill up your email. It's very hard to track. It's very hard to do. So there was a question that came in, and I'll address it in a moment. It's how do you add your links to Zoom meetings into your course? We'll definitely do that in just a little bit here. I wanted to leave that one for one of the last things we do in the class. But this assignment tool is very handy as we start building assignments. So if I just put like assignment, and I'll just put assign 1 so we can get his assignment 1, you definitely want to put a description and some sort of context here. So I'm not going to put much more than just description context. And then if there's any additional files, maybe there is a lab worksheet, or if there's a different resource that you have to be able to do this assignment, you attach it here. You browse your computer. You find on your computer that attachment you need to put into that particular area. You go ahead and attach it, and you're able to move forward. Due date, set that due date. That will help you understand when students have turned things after a specific timestamp. They'll be able to turn it in, but they will get a timestamp if they turn it in after the time you have here. You give it a points possible. You're really setting out all the different aspects of an assignment. Again, this assignment tool can be unpacked in a much, much broader way. I'm just kind of glossing over the surface of it, but that would be the very basics you'd need to set up an assignment. And if you had a rubric, you can add it to this assignment to help in your grading. It would automatically be associated with this assignment if you select a rubric that you've built within Blackboard. There are a slew of other different items. One of the biggest ones is in the submission details and how you submit that assignment. So a big popular one is our plagiarism tool, the Safe Assign. It's a international database or a global database of other papers that have been turned in by other students, or other kind of scenarios where you'll find information on the web, and it will check for originality in those if you check this. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind is if you're going to have an iterative, a kind of an assignment that you're putting in there and you need to check plagiarism frequently, typically you're putting in a rough draft and you don't want it to actually hit that database, because if you turn it in once, the second time you turn it in, it'll look like you have an originality issue with your own paper. So I always exclude submissions from that database if it's just like a rough draft of the paper, and I only do the final version that would be submit to make sure that happens right. Then going down, you have all the typical kind of options you might expect. But again, go through some of the videos. We unpack this a lot more that we have that I can get your attention to at the end of this seminar here. All right, so once I submit the assignment, it's going to be added right into my assignments area. So there's a couple things that we can do and a couple things that just happened. One of the first things that's happened is created an area now for students to be able to submit their assignments. That's great. It's not going to come into your email or any other kind of way. It's going to come right here into Blackboard. How that happens is it's going to come into your Grade Center. So if I go to my Grade Center down here, we load the Grade Center, you take a peek. There is that assignment 1. It's already been added into Blackboard. Now, one interesting thing is if I go to this dropdown, there's typically an area where you can delete the column in this dropdown. It's not there right now because you created a linkage. Basically, there is an item in your Grade Center, there's an item in the assignment folder. With both of those two pieces, they're linked together, so it's not going to allow you to delete the column out of the Grade Center when you have an assignment that's going to be collecting some information. Now, as students turn in their information, you can just go to this Needs Grading tool, which is super handy. And in chronological order, it's going to show you all the assignments that have been turned in, not just for that one assignment, for all assignments. So you can sort through it by categorization, through a student, through a date. There's a lot of different things you can do here. This is where you would live to grade your assignments. We're not going to go through the grading today, but just to give you an idea where that would be. One last tool or one last idea here is we've created an assignment in the assignments area. So imagine creating 10, 12 different assignments in the assignments area. As students come here, they'd be able to see all the assignments, but there might be some context lost. They may really want to be kind of submersed in the course module information. So we can put this link to this assignment, and kind of going back to those guidelines we talked about, we could put this link to the assignment in a very specific area within your Blackboard course in one of those course modules. So if you go into course modules, let's go into this module 1, for instance, what you can do is you can go into your build content, and you can go in, you could create a course link. The course link will link to something that exists within your course. So if I hit this browse button, you're going to get this little pop-up. It's going to say, okay, what do you want to link to within your course? So if you go down your list, there's a lot of information in here, but there's that assignments folder. So this is just kind of a tree view, so to speak, of your navigation. I click on the assignment folder, it's going to load all that information, and I'll hit submit. So what you've essentially done is you've linked to the assignment here inside of the module. all the assignments actually live in this one big repository of assignments. And you've created two places for the students to get to that same assignment. So if they're immersed in the module and they're finding their information there, they're going to click that assignment and it's going to take them right into their assignments and then open this assignment one so that they know that they need to start doing that particular assignment. So here's a great example of what a student would see when they need to turn in their assignment. Points possible, due date, any information, additional context, and then the ability to attach and submit their assignment. Once that's been submitted, that's when it gets into your queue and you can do your grading. Now that concept can be taken for exams and quizzes as well. Under this assessment area, you can add a test that's already been created. Now, if I went to this exams and quizzes over on the left-hand side, I hit assignments or assessments and I hit test, for instance, it's gonna bring up a list and saying, hey, here's existing tests you've created. Again, this is another field that you'd wanna look into, but you can create a test in here and then it would show up in this list. Now, if for some reason you didn't have a test and you're seeing this view similar to this, you can hit create. It will take you to the test tool and you can kind of start building that guy out. All right, I'm gonna pause there and I'm gonna just let you know how you can build out this menu, how you can do a little bit more. Look through this menu. There's a lot of items in here that are very helpful. There's some tool links, there's some content areas. The big chunk down here that has research guides, library, tutoring services, instructor resources, and tech requirements. That one you should likely leave because it just links out to a lot of great resources that already are there. It's going to line out tech requirements that students would have to have for uses of Blackboard. It also links to our tutoring services if they need some online tutoring. Very helpful in those particular areas. But how you add areas to this menu is you highlight this plus sign in the upper left-hand corner. You click on content area, you give it a name. So we can just say, I don't know, let's call it resources for right now. I'll go ahead and click available to users and I'll hit submit. So there you go, we got a resources area at the bottom of the page. And to get it to go to the top, I'll just drag this onto the top, or drop it, and there you have it. You have a content area that you can leverage. Now, if I click into this content area, you can start adding your content to your sections. So this is similar to what we already did with the course modules. We just created our own called resources. But if I were to go to course modules, I was able to just create, let's say, another module. So let's do module 2. I'm gonna go and build content, create a content folder. I'll call this guy module 2. Again, with the guidelines, you might wanna put some sort of other information. So context to what it is here. And we're just creating a folder. All it needed was a name. So we got a folder now. So we can then go into that folder and you can start seeing how this might become a little bit of a navigation labyrinth if you put too much into too many things. Now we have a course modules folder and there's 2 modules in it and we're in the second module at this point. But now it's up to you to start building content. You can go to this build content, add an item, which is just a description, maybe an attachment. You can add all these different items that you're seeing in here. Some are links to things. You can search for YouTube within Blackboard and add YouTube videos into your course. You can add your assessments, which are tests, or you can have surveys, assignments, a lot of different tools that are within that assessments area. There's additional tools, all the tools that Blackboard offers, as much as some of the additional tools outside of Blackboard that are third-party linked into the system. And then finally, additional partner content. Some of the partner content will be found in this area, and this will be something that your publisher or your vendor would tell you, hey, you need to go here to be able to integrate to the system. So you would spend a lot of your time building your content. The biggest item that is used is this create item. It's as simple as giving it some sort of a name and then some sort of a description and typically an attachment. So that would get you items attached in there. So you have a PowerPoint presentation that you'd like to share or something like that. You'd be able to drop that in there, hit submit, and you're gonna have a nicely named piece of content that is available within your course. So there you go. Now, typically that name is gonna have a little bit more description as to what it is so that when students click on it, they know what they're downloading. Now, we talked about some tools, we talked about some other areas. There is a course management menu underneath the navigation that is very specific to you as the instructor. You're gonna get to a lot of other items like your course tools, which course tools are available within your Blackboard. You'll also notice that there is like your test surveys and polls. So if you're interested in looking at how to do some testing surveys and polls, that you'll find that in that course tools area. You also have your evaluation. This is where you can pull course reports, see how many times people have logged into the system if you're a student. You also have your grade center. That grade center is the big one. That's where you're going to be putting a lot of those grades. A grade center session, we'd likely have a good consultation with you, how you might set that up. We also have some additional videos out there that are available for that. So definitely look at our self-paced Blackboard if you'd like to go through a self-paced session of this and unpack all of the tools that you're seeing today. Users and groups, just really, it shows all the users that you have in the system. You can also break the course apart into groups if needed. And then customization. These are just areas of your course that you might adjust. For the most part, nobody really touches the customization early on, but there is one area that you might consider with the customization, and that is your properties. When you go to customization and properties, that is also where you can make your course available or turn it off. So that thing that we saw earlier with quickly, you could also do it right here and turn your course on and off. And then finally, one of the last areas on here is your package and utilities. This is where you're able to copy between courses. This is where you're able to import certain aspects from outside of Blackboard. You could also bulk delete aspects of your courses in Blackboard. Now, you don't want to actually delete a lot from your course unless you kind of have a mistake that happens and you course copy too much into a course. That's where that becomes really handy, but it also can delete things that are in play. So if you had some assignments that students had turned in and you delete it, you'll lose that data. So you want to be careful and tread carefully there. So that will cover the majority of the overview of Blackboard and the different areas that you might jump into within the system and get you started at building that course menu. So as you go through there, I did want to mention a new tool that we integrated. I promised I would talk about the Zoom meeting, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this link that we did. So I'm going to delete this resources link because we didn't want that in there. I also have the Zoom meeting link, which I'm just going to go and delete really quick because I am going to do it again. I'm going to show you how you get your Zoom link. So let's say you're an instructor that has a Zoom account fully licensed. You know you're going to do some Zoom sessions throughout your semester. How do you get Zoom integrated? Well, you go up to this plus button. You're going to add a tool link. You click tool link, and you can call it Zoom sessions or whatever you like to call it. It's a name that you can give it. In the drop-down, you're going to go down to something that says Zoom meeting, and you do want to make it available to users, and you'll hit submit. Now, once you do that, you've added a new area into your Blackboard. You'll see it right down at the bottom there. Everything gets added to the list at the very bottom, and then you can go ahead and pull it up to the various areas that you want it to be. Now, this next step requires you to have a Zoom account with your CSU-Pueblo.edu email, and it has to already be in our system in Zoom. So if that doesn't happen, give our help desk a call, request a full licensed Zoom account. We'll get that set up for you. But this next step makes it really cool. You don't have to do anything other than click on Zoom sessions. And what it's going to do, it's auto going to link to a Zoom scheduling app. So if you're familiar with Zoom, you've already done some scheduling in here, this is going to feel very familiar. The only difference is this is going to pull this down to course meetings that you have done only. So it's really only going to show you things that are specific for this class. So you'd have to go in through this particular way to make it work right. If you want to schedule meetings for, like, say, multiple classes, this meetings will be only for this class, and only this class will see these meetings, and only this class will see the recordings for this particular section. So it's really powerful. If you have multiple classes, you have to log in, create that Zoom link, you'll go in, and then you'll be able to set up your sessions. So it'd be as easy as saying schedule a new meeting. It throws in the course name in there, but you could put the course name, maybe put week 1. You probably want to put a time period. When are you going to record this meeting? So if it was, for instance, today, 7/31/2020, you put that information in there. You'd have some other information as to what time it's going to occur, put that information there, and set up all the various aspects of this session. I always put waiting rooms on my meetings. Everything else is looking great, and I'll go ahead and hit save. Now I have scheduled a meeting already within Zoom. Super easy, super quick. I can copy the invitation if I need to go paste it elsewhere within my course if I'd like. But additionally, if I go back to my course and click on Zoom sessions now, And we'll see the upcoming session at 2 p.m. today. There it is. Students will be able to just jump in. Now, you have start because you are the person that scheduled the meeting, but a student would have a big button that says join. And then when it's been recorded, they would just go to the cloud recordings. They'd be able to find that cloud recording from that particular date. Great tools for using Zoom in this session. Now, I know the session cut out before we were able to ask questions at the end, so I regret that. That was an internet fluke at my house that cut out, so I went ahead and recorded the end of the session that you'd have all these different tips and tricks to kind of end out the session. But if you have additional questions, send me an email. You can also go to our ticket system, csupueblo.edu/IT, and that will be a really good step at getting you some additional help. A couple quick areas that I had mentioned before, also the Center for Teaching and Learning Resources, great resources for there, more on the academic strategy, different tips, tricks, tactics of how you can leverage that. IT website gives you information of all things tech. And just a little plug for 2 of our other services. If faculty members or students are having issues and need some technology, we have the tech drive-through, and there's also the library curbside as well as this creating and teaching an online hybrid course. So a good supplement to what you've done today, or actually this is more of the supplement to this course, is how to teach online in a hybrid online course. This is a self-paced course that's not facilitated. You can engage in it at any time. 3 modules, 10 hours, and you're going to have a lot better step forward on how to teach online. Thank you for your time today. Have a great semester. Good day.